Uchumi Supermarket was once Kenya's pride, a brand every family trusted, and a name that meant convenience and affordability. But behind the shelves, behind the bright signs, the story is chaotic, shocking, and almost unbelievable.
We want to know more about what is happening in the company because they are not giving us the information.
From soaring to become a regional powerhouse, to collapsing under debt, corruption, and mismanagement, to fighting for survival against all odds, Uchumi's journey is insane.
Retail chain Uchumi Supermarkets has posted a rare profit of 8.8 million shillings for the year ended June 2025. It's first in years.
As long as we will have the right corporate governance structures, it means this company can exist for the next 1,000 years.
Today, we are diving deep into the rise, the fall, and the desperate rebirth of Uchumi Supermarket. Uchumi Supermarket Limited was founded in 1975 at a time when Kenya's shopping culture looked very different from today. Most people bought food and household goods from open-air markets, roadside kiosks, and small neighborhood shops. Prices were inconsistent, stock was unreliable, and modern supermarkets were extremely rare. The Kenyan government decided to take an active role in changing that. Uchumi was created through three state-owned institutions: the Industrial Commercial and Development Corporation, ICDC, Kenya Wine Agencies Limited, KWAL, and the Kenya National Trading Corporation, KNTC. These organizations provided not only capital but also oversight, ensuring that the supermarket would operate as a public-serving business with professional management. The name Uchumi, meaning economy in Swahili, reflected its mission, which is to provide affordable, reliable goods to ordinary Kenyans. In 1976, Uchumi took a bold step that will set it apart from almost every other Kenyan business at the time. It signed a management contract with the Italian supermarket company, Standard SPA. The contract was not just about technical support, it included training managers, supervisors, and staff in modern retail operations, establishing supply chains, customer service standards, self-service shopping systems, and inventory management. The first Uchumi stores opened in Nairobi in 1976, and they started very small, just 3 or 4 outlets. For many shoppers, it was their first experience in a fully organized store. Shelves were neatly arranged, prices were clearly marked, and products were reliable. Customers quickly noticed the difference. Shopping at Uchumi felt structured and predictable, something unfamiliar in Kenya at the time, but it slowly became a preferred experience for those who could access it. Through the 1980s, Uchumi expanded cautiously to major towns across the country. Growth was gradual because supply chains, logistics, and staff training needed time to catch up. Uchumi concentrated on the basics, keeping shelves stocked, offering competitive prices, and maintaining clean, orderly stores. This approach built trust among shoppers, suppliers, and employees alike. Local farmers and manufacturers found a reliable market for their products, while thousands of employees secured a stable, long-term jobs. Uchumi was becoming more than a store. It was quietly shaping modern retail in Kenya. By the late 1980s, Uchumi had established itself as the first modern self-service supermarket in Kenya, setting the standard for competitors and reshaping customers' expectations. A major turning point came in 1992 when Uchumi was listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. This allowed ordinary Kenyans to buy shares and gave the company access to public capital for expansion. Before going public, Uchumi had already achieved modest but consistent profitability, which made it attractive to investors. With this funding, the company was able to open larger stores and hypermarkets in the 1990s, offering household goods and broader range of products under one roof. From outside, Uchumi looked strong and permanent. But behind the success, expansion was accelerating, operational costs were rising, and management systems were being stretched to their limits. The supermarket that had built its reputation on careful growth and reliability was now entering a phase where ambition and speed would start testing its foundation. But before we continue, if you find this video interesting, make sure to like and subscribe for more captivating stories. By the early 2000s, Uchumi had grown beyond its cautious beginnings. The supermarket chain now operated dozens of stores across Kenya and had expanded into Uganda and Tanzania, aiming to become a regional retail leader. At first glance, everything looked strong. Sales were high, the brand was widely known, and investors were confident. But behind the scenes, serious problems were building. Supply chain was stretched, some stores were overstocked while others ran empty, and operational costs were climbing faster than revenue. Financial strain was growing. Uchumi relied heavily on borrowed money and supplier credit, often delaying payment suppliers for months. By 2005, auditors revealed Uchumi was reporting losses of more than 400 million Kenyan shillings, even as sales figures looked healthy. Internal oversight was weak, and senior executives were struggling to manage the growing complexity of operations. Leadership struggles compounded the crisis. The board and CEO often clashed over strategy. While some pushed for rapid expansion into Uganda and Tanzania, others warned the company lacked financial and operational capacity to support that growth. Dr. Jonathan Siano, who later faced accusations of corruption, was at the center of these tensions, accused by some board members of prioritizing short-term profits over long-term stability. Decisions such as opening underperforming stores and diverting funds from operational needs to cover debts created friction with both the board and senior management. By 2006, the situation reached a breaking point. Uchumi was officially placed under receivership. Stores across Kenya were closed, including flagship outlets in Nairobi's Lang'ata Hypermarket, Mombasa's Nyali branch, Kisumu City Center, and Eldoret's Pioneer Mall store. Its international operations in Uganda and Tanzania were shattered. Over 2,000 employees were laid off instantly, and suppliers were left with unpaid bills stretching into hundreds of millions of shillings. Everyday customers who had relied on Uchumi for stable prices and accountability were suddenly left without familiar stores. The collapse also revealed deeper leadership issues. Internal audits uncovered cases of fund misallocation, unauthorized spending, and irregular procurement, which contributed to the company's financial instability. Board meetings during this period were reportedly tense, with disagreements spilling into press and undermining public confidence. Media coverage highlighted executive conflicts, painting a picture of once respected supermarket chain riven by mismanagement. The chaos reverberated across Kenya's retail industry. Competitors temporarily filled the gap left by Uchumi's absence, while suppliers scrambled to find new distribution channels. For suppliers who had delivered goods worth millions of shillings, with the expectation of payment, the collapse was devastating. Some small manufacturers and farmers reported losses large enough to threaten their own businesses. In the aftermath, the government of Kenya, the Central Bank of Kenya, and the Ministry of Finance stepped in to prevent total liquidation. Negotiations began among the receivers, banks, large creditors, suppliers, and employee representatives. After months of discussion, a rescue plan was implemented. In July 2006, Uchumi reopened a handful of stores in Nairobi, focusing on survival rather than expansion. Management was restructured, oversight strengthened, and the company began rebuilding trust with suppliers and customers. By 2010, Uchumi had officially exited receivership. In May 2011, it was relisted on the Nairobi Securities Exchange.
It is now my pleasure to declare Uchumi Markets shares relisted,
raising about 1.1 billion Kenyan shillings in fresh capital. With this funding, the company expanded again, and by 2014, it operated over 40 stores across East Africa, reporting 14.45 billion Kenyan shillings in sales and a net profit of 384 million Kenyan shillings. However, governance problems persisted. During the 2014 right issue, the Capital Markets Authority, CMA, discovered that Uchumi's financial statements misrepresented its position, profits were overstated, liabilities understated, and some proceeds were diverted to pay old debts instead of funding growth. Senior executives, including CEO Dr. Jonathan Siano, faced accusations of corruption and mismanagement, while auditors, Ernst & Young, were fined 10 million Kenyan shillings.
After reviewing the case, the CMA has now fined EY 10 million shillings. It has further directed the firm to implement 3 years of remedial training for all staff who audit listed companies. Failure to do so could see EY barred from working with listed firms and CMA licensees.
This revelation further shook investors' confidence. Competition from other supermarket chains intensified, operational inefficiencies persisted, and leadership instability returned. In 2015, senior executives were dismissed.
The board of Uchumi Supermarkets has terminated the contract of Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Siano effective immediately.
And all remaining stores in Uganda and Tanzania were closed, leaving over 900 employees without jobs. Uchumi's debt continued to rise, and by 2016, it had begun closing branches across Kenya, shrinking into a handful of outlets. By 2020, Uchumi owed more than 8.4 billion Kenyan shillings. To avoid complete liquidation, it entered a company voluntary arrangement, CVA, a formal debt restructuring process that allowed the company to negotiate with the creditors while continuing limited operations. At this stage, Uchumi no longer focused on growth or market dominance. Its priority had shifted to staying alive and honoring obligations. By the time Kenya entered the 2020s, many people had already written off Uchumi Supermarket. The once iconic retailer that had served generations of Kenyan families was down to a single operating store at Kasarani, Nairobi. Years of debt, court battles, unpaid suppliers, and broken trust had reduced the supermarket chain to a shadow of what it used to be. But unlike previous moments of crisis, this time Uchumi did not collapse completely. It stayed alive, barely, and that survival marked the beginning of a slow, cautious rebirth. The COVID-19 pandemic made Uchumi's situation even harder. Lockdowns reduced consumer spending and disrupted supply chains, hurting the entire retail sector. For Uchumi, already weakened, survival depended on cutting costs to the bone. Operations were scaled down, staff numbers were kept minimal, and the company focused only on keeping its last store open. There was no aggressive marketing, no expansion talk, just survival. What stood out in this period was the government's new stance. In earlier crises, the Kenyan government had stepped in with bailouts and guarantees. After 2020, that approach changed. Despite being a major shareholder, the government did not announce fresh finance rescue. Instead, regulators and state agencies focused on oversight and restructuring, signaling that Uchumi would have to stand on its own. The era of easy bailouts was over. At the same time, Uchumi's positions in the capital market remained frozen. Its shares stayed suspended on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, meaning investors could not trade the stock. The suspension reflected unresolved governance, financial reporting, and compliance issues dating back in the years. While Uchumi was still operating on the ground, its public identity was effectively inactive, leaving shareholders trapped with little clarity on recovery or value. Behind the scenes, Uchumi continued negotiations with the creditors. Many suppliers, landlords, and service providers had already written off large portions of what they were owed during earlier restructuring. Some accepted that they might never recover their full money. Others remained locked in a long legal processes.
Uchumi has been given 15 days to settle a 67.6 million shilling debt to a supplier or have its property auctioned.
The rebirth of Uchumi came at a cost. Survival for the company meant permanent losses for many businesses that once depended on it. The human impact was even deeper. Thousands of former employees had lost their jobs during the collapse years. Many waited for unpaid salaries, pensions, and terminal dues that took years to resolve, if they were resolved at all. For them, Uchumi's survival did not feel like a victory. It felt unfinished, a company moving forward while parts of its past remained unresolved.
Serikali ilipatiana milioni 700 on December. hiyo milioni 700 mpaka saizi wanasema hawana. Tunajua uchumi iko na madeni, yes, but kuna ile pesa kidogo yenye walinunua mali, na hiyo mali tunauza on a daily basis. Tunataka watuambie hiyo pesa wanapeleka wapi?
The rebirth also happened without assets that once defined Uchumi's power. Most of its former flagship locations in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, and Eldoret had been lost permanently to landlords after years of unpaid rents. Those spaces were taken over by competitors or repurposed, meaning Uchumi was rebuilding without the prime locations that had once guaranteed visibility and foot traffic. The retail world itself had also moved forward. Online shopping, delivery platforms, mobile payments, and data-driven inventory systems became standard across the industry. For Uchumi, there was no major e-commerce rollout or delivery infrastructure, not by choice but by limitation. The capital needed to modernize was simply not available, leaving Uchumi operating in a more traditional retail model while the market evolved around it. Even as Uchumi remained operational, expansion was treated as a danger rather than a goal. Kenya's retail business operates on thin margins, high rent, and intense competition. For Uchumi, growing too fast could easily recreate the same problems that caused its collapse. Management understood that staying small was not weakness, it was survival strategy. By late 2020s, Uchumi had become something entirely different from what it once was. It was no longer a national giant or a regional player. It was a symbol of resilience, of mistakes, of how fragile even iconic companies can be. The rebirth was real, but it was cautious, quiet, and uncertain. Uchumi did not return with fanfare. It returned with restraints. And whether that restraints will finally secure its future or only delay another collapse remained an unanswered question.